I'm Angela, and this is Joseph, and we decided to do a project on the Niagara Falls. So a little bit of history about it. It comes from the word Anguahara, which is from the Iroquois Indians, which means the strait or the narrow, and is an international boundary between the U.S. and Canada, and actually most of the falls lie between Canada territory, and 20% of the world's freshwater lies in the Great Lakes, and most of the water flows over Niagara Falls. The falls are made up of three smaller falls, and the first one's American, the Canadian, and the Bridal Veil Falls. And the Bridal Veil Falls has also actually been named quite many other names. I researched it, but they kind of delete them after they change the names, which is weird. But right now it's named because of its looks. The American Falls is located between Prospect Point, which is located here, and all the way over here, Luna Island, and its brink is 1,060 feet. And the Bridal Falls, which is right here and technically looks like a veil, is located between Luna Island and Goat Island, which you can't really see, but it's pretty big. The volume of water that these waterfalls create around 150,000 gallons per second, and it's subject to change during the year and at different times of season, especially winter. It slows down a little bit, and also how much the power plant takes up, which I'll talk about a little bit later. The next one is the Canadian Falls, and it's also called the Horseshoe Falls, and it is located between Goat Island, which once again you can't really see, but it's here, and Table Rock, which is where most of the tourists stand to take pictures of the falls. The length of its brink is 2,600 feet, and the height of the falls is about 167 feet, and this one pretty much goes around the whole way around, is about 167 feet total. Back on the last slide, say it's 176 feet high of falls, but because of the rocky bottom, at different areas it tends to be less. And the volume of water that the Horseshoe Falls produces is 600,000 feet, which is due to Goat Island because it doesn't prohibit the water flow around as it does for the American and Bridal Falls. Some interesting facts is, according to the USGS, Niagara Falls, it appears almost that 1/3 of the Canadian Falls is located within the U.S. territory. And the movies Niagara and Superman both used falls during their production. And the two daredevils lost their lives over the last 10 years trying to go over the falls. And it was really interesting. I found that the first person that survived was a 60-year-old woman, and she was a school teacher, and she went over in a barrel. And I researched it, but I couldn't find if it was like a wooden barrel or, a metal one, but I'm not sure. But I thought it was pretty interesting. And the boat in the previous picture, it just showed. Does anyone know what that's called? Nice. I forgot
It was the test.
It was a test for me, and I failed. And one big question they have is, has the flow ever stopped or frozen in the past years that it's been there? And technically, it hasn't. But on March 29th of 1848, there was an ice jam on the upper part of the Niagara River, just a few miles north of it, and waterfalls didn't actually freeze, but it caused the flow to be very small, and where people could actually walk out on top of the falls and stand there and look over the edge, which I think I couldn't do that even if it did stop. And then the flow was stopped on the American Falls in 1969 for a few months because they decided they were going to try and reconstruct the bottom of the rocks and clean it up. But then they realized it was going to be too expensive to get the machinery down there and try and move all the huge boulders that were located down there. If you look at these two pictures, this is when it froze, or technically froze, and people were out walking on it. And it was only, the flow only stopped for a few hours. It didn't last days or anything. And this is when they decided to try and clean up the American Falls. And here you can see Goat Island right back here. We had decided to do a little research on the Niagara River. And this is pretty much an overview of all the Great Lakes. And here's where Lake Erie starts running into the falls and then on into Lake Ontario. The Niagara River is what makes up Niagara Falls, of course, and it runs from Lake Erie all the way into Lake Ontario. And if you see the island that's right there in the middle, it's called there's a Chipaway Channel, which is on this side, and the other one's called the Tonawanda Channel, and it splits the Niagara River, but they still consider this the Niagara River. They just consider these two channels. And it makes up the Grand Island, and from this side on is U.S. territory. There's about two main influences that cause a waterfall. One of is the amount of water, the cross-sectional area that causes the flow over the river to change as the riverside changes throughout the riverbed. And the other one is the elevation and how steeply the water is flowing toward the falls. For Niagara River, it also is due to the power plant that they created a channel up about 2 or 3 miles north of the falls, and they use it constantly to create power. There's 60 to 70% of the water from the Niagara River is used to be converted into energy, and as you can see, there's about 1,200,000 gallons per second that's diverted to power. And these are what I've said before when I was explaining the different falls. And Joe's going to take over.
Angela? And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to analyze this, put it into engineering terms, and we went to the USGS and we took data that they had collected at different collection points. We have Ontario, Canada, because the river runs actually through Canada into New York, and then Erie County, New York. And what you do is we collect the discharge data for each point, and they do this every year. We use that data. We use SMATA actually. Stands for Stormwater Management Design. Engineers use it a lot. Use it for hydrological design, storm sewer systems, pond routing, statistical distribution. It's really good. If you guys have never used it, you definitely should. And if you're in here, hopefully you have used it. So what we produced as SMATA was basically a return period for each place. So we have Erie County, New York, and what this data tells you is that within 100 years, at this point, you're going to have a 100% chance of this flow, 259,000 cubic feet per second, being produced. Same is true for the Canadian location. And once you get these data points, we actually graphed it, and this is the graph for Erie County. This is the graph for the Ontario Canadian location. And you can see both of these locations, they have a pretty consistent stream flow. And what that really indicates is, really healthy ecosystem, long-term sustainability. There is, on both locations, if you notice, the biggest fluctuation is right here. And that corresponds to about the mid-1960s for both of them. And it's actually interesting because in the 1960s, New York had the biggest drought, it was the biggest drought in New York history. It was certainly the most severe drought. There hasn't been a more severe drought since. And it wasn't just like a dry spell. What actually happened was, it wasn't just a typical dry spell. During the winter and spring, this huge low pressure system basically developed, and it hung over the Catskill mountain region, and the way it worked is it basically just suppressed the precipitation. It actually took 6 years. If I go back here, it took 6 years for the low point of this drought to basically for the flow to get back to its kind of original state. So power plants, you know, you have this huge river, you have all this power, all this energy. What are they doing with it? Well, there's 5 power plants along the river. The biggest one is the first one. And these are not necessarily in ascending order, but the Robert Moses Power Plant, biggest by far. 13 turbines, capacity of 2.4 million kilowatts of power. For perspective, almost 2 million homes can be powered from this one plant, and there's 5 of them. Well, not 5 of these, but 5 plants. The way it works, water runs through the turbines spin under the pressure, the water spit back out right into the river. We have conservation of mass, no water is lost, we're not wasting anything. And the turbines spin magnets, produces power, and enough for all 5 power plants is enough to produce 3.8 million happy people with power. And I know what you're thinking. I may not, you know, some of you in here are like, you know what? I'm really interested in all of this fall stuff. Well, you know what? Niagara Falls, it produces power, it produces sustainability, wonderful ecosystem, and it also produces a place that you can take a hot date. And to show this, an expensive date. But to show this, we have found a little video, and what this shows is basically the lights. They installed these lights in the 1920s, and this is the Niagara River, or the Niagara Falls, lit up at night, and unfortunately we don't have the sound. But yeah.
And they change the lenses of the lights over the seasons depending on what season it is in.
So no matter what you're looking for, Niagara Falls and the Niagara River has something to offer. That is